Hey guys, how's it going? Duty, I'm back with another video, and in today's video, I have just finished The Watcher, and so, like a lot of you guys, I'm very confused. I can't even say I have a theory, so I want to look at other people's theories as to what the hell was going on there, but also I want to look at some articles that tell the real story, because apparently the show took a lot of liberties. So that's why I'm on my webcam right now, not my proper camera, because we'll go over to a reaction kind of setting in just a second and look at some articles. Before we get there though, I just want to give a shout out to my patron of the day, and the patron of the day is Matthew Aubrey. So Matthew, thank you so much for being a patron. Thank you to all my patrons. I really appreciate you. And if you'd like to become a patron, check out the bonus content and all that good stuff over there. The link is down below. Okay, The Watcher. So we have a 17 article here, okay, and it's The Watcher, where is the Broadus family now? I have given this a little read beforehand, and it does kind of tell you the differences. And the main difference that I can see, that I've been told as well, is that the family never actually moved into the property. And I feel like this is quite something to take a liberty with, but I also understand that it would be a bit difficult to kind of build all that suspension from a different location, I guess, although they did it quite well when, you know, the family were in the motel. But apparently the family never actually moved into the property, and the first letter that was received was actually posted to the house 2 days before it was actually sold. And so it wasn't specifically sent to the Broadus family, it was sent to the potential new owners. But the family purchased the house, and they had builders renovating the house, but they never actually moved in themselves, and they kept their distance, and apparently it was because of these letters. So that is a major difference, but I guess, you know, ultimately there was a Watcher, and ultimately we never knew who it was. So although taking liberties, there are definitely obviously parallels. So what was the reality? The reality was apparently they moved into the property in 2014, and they purchased it for $1.3 million. In the show, it was like a $3.3 million building, which like seems like a weird thing to change, in my opinion. And they ended up selling it like 5 years later for $400,000 less than they bought it for like $995, I think, or something like that. $950. Anyway, it was about $400,000 less. So it was less than $1 million that they ended up selling it for, and they sold it 5 years later. Yeah, it says here, like, they moved in to 647 Boulevard in Westfield between June and August of 2014. Never lived there. And then down here somewhere it says that they moved out in 2019. Yeah, Derek and Maria Broadus and their three children, not two, have since moved from 647 Boulevard and sold the home in 2019. So they never lived there, but they owned it technically for 5 years. Which is crazy to me. And apparently they have moved in somewhere else in Westfield. So they're in the same kind of area, just not in that house. So they received letters, and from what I can understand, the letters were very similar, if not word for word, what they received. Including one of the letters that read, "It has been years and years since the young blood has ruled the hallways of the house," referring to the children, of course. "Have you found all the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better." So there are a lot of, you know, similarities in the show. Apparently the Broaduses sued the previous owners. The previous owners were there for 23 years. They sued the previous owners, or attempted to, the Woodses, in 2015 for fraudulent concealment, intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress because, you know, they weren't informed that this was an issue. But the previous tenants claim that they never received any letters other than one that they didn't really pay attention to as they were selling the house, which could well be potentially the one that was posted 2 days before the house was sold. But because they never received any threatening letters, the case was dismissed, or the sue case was dismissed. Well, why would they tell people about something that they never experienced themselves? But it begs the question, why didn't they experience it themselves? You know, it's very, very strange. But then this whole thing is incredibly, incredibly weird, isn't it? Derek Broadus is actually on Twitter at dbroad, if you want to check him out, with 2 Ds at the end. And he's very active on Twitter, apparently. And CNN tweeted in 2019, one family's nightmare is over. They finally sold the home where they were terrorized by the letters from the Watcher. And Derek called someone out called Leader Times. Hey, Horace, how's the hoax theory you started about my family holding up? I'm still waiting for my apology. Hashtag gutless at Westfield TAP. So this is obviously something that they've had to deal with for a long time. And as is portrayed in the show, Derek himself was a prime suspect, let's be honest. And obviously it came out in the show, so I would assume in real life as well, although they have taken liberties, so this could be incorrect, that Derek did actually write one of the letters to try and get his wife to sell up. But, of course, this then makes it appear as in, well, if he's done one, what's to say he hasn't done all of them? They were clearly in financial dire straits with purchasing such an expensive property. Maybe there was a mistake there and, you know, the letters were created in order to, you know, get them to sell up. But obviously it backfired because the letters themselves caused the property value to absolutely plummet. As you can see, they had to sell their property for $400,000 less than what they bought it for, which, as they, you know, renovated some of the areas as well, that's not ideal. But the Watcher has never been caught. Obviously there was the fact that the DNA came back as a female on the envelopes, and apparently, you know, it says here that multiple reports claim that the letters from the Watcher were investigated by the Westfield Police Department, the Union County Prosecutor's Office, and an FBI profiler, a private investigator, and of course the Broadus family themselves. Per CNN, Derek Broadus confirmed that the profiler found it to be someone in their 50s or 60s who lived in the area, and that the Broaduses' surrounding neighbours didn't seem normal. So obviously, as you can see in the show, like, the neighbours are very, very weird. They are just odd people. But that's not to say, you know, people can be odd. It doesn't mean that there's anything sinister about them. But it's just difficult, isn't it? So let's look at suspects. This guy is probably the person. There's two for me. There's two for me that I would put my money on. Okay, one that is kind of not even really delved that deeply into in the show, which is John Graff, who is in the tunnel in that scene and clearly has like some sort of underground bedroom set up because obviously he's a wanted man for murdering his whole family. And if it is true that the father did see John in his house pretending to be a property inspector, did interact with him, and he was living underground in the tunnels and over at what was his name, Jasper's house, then it is very, very odd, you know, and I feel like he would be a very strong candidate. However, the only thing is he apparently got letters as well, if the show is to be believed, unless this John Graff guy is a completely made-up character, which actually I'm going to Google in this video because I don't want to go too deep on John Graff if actually they've just made him up for the show. But it just, the thing is with this whole show, and the thing is with all of these theories, is I feel like you can kind of say, yeah, do you know what, it's probably that person, but then equally go, actually, no, it's probably not. You know, it's just very, very difficult. Like this guy, the author / English teacher, who was just obsessed with the house to such a weird degree, like, it would make perfect sense for it to be him. Perfect sense. He apparently wrote like over 50 letters. He had this idea to start writing letters to the house, not the occupants, but the house, one student told the outlet. Another student added that Kaplow revealed he had sent more than 50 letters to the house he was obsessed with. So this man is obsessed with this house. And, you know, if a new family move in and they're starting to renovate it, maybe it upsets him. So I feel like this guy's probably the strongest suspect, I would say. But this guy is like a well-renowned author now. One of his books got turned into a movie starring Zac Efron called Me and Orson Welles. You know, so he is a very successful person, and it would be quite interesting if it turned out that this guy, this world-renowned author, turned into a movie starring Zac Efron, turned out to be the elusive Watcher. It would be quite something. You know, it's a story that probably exceeds any fiction that this man could write himself. But he was obsessed with the house. He was obsessed with writing letters to houses, obsessed with writing a letter to that specific house. So, I mean, it all adds up, doesn't it? If the show is to be believed, his ex-wife was even like, oh yeah, it's definitely him. It's definitely him. He used to write letters to that house all the time, and then one year got a bit violent with it, you know. Yeah, I feel like this is your guy. I do feel like this is your guy, and surely the show is going to shine a bit of a spotlight on Robert Kaplow. Surely. So we've got the Watcher could be a wealthy Westfield resident. On the other hand, a Reddit theory suggests that the Watcher could well be an older resident in the Westfield area. The person who posted their theory shared a very similar situation containing anonymous threats that occurred in Creeks Hill, a nearby town that is similar in nature to the New Jersey suburb. To sum it up, a wealthy family was sending anonymous threats to the local town basketball coach for not playing their teenage son. The threats were often directed at his young children with specifics about them and resulted in high levels of psychological trauma for him and his wife. Sound familiar? The similarity between the two stories has led me to believe that the Watcher is not a mentally deranged stalker, but some wealthy subordinate who has petty personal issues with the Broaduses or the old owners of the house. They continued before suggesting that the Watcher may be a Karen or a wealthy old couple who had petty issues with the previous owners and wanted them to suffer. While it hasn't been proven to be true, this theory could be a possibility considering the eerily similar events that took place in Creeks Hill. That's quite interesting. Like, petty, elderly, rich couple. I mean, there was the neighbours over the road, wasn't there? You know, who was just staring at the house all the time, and they had the thing about the flowers and stuff, and they were quite rude and abrasive. And if the son plot line is correct, that the son, you know, took two bodies that were similar to his parents and shot them in the face so they couldn't be identified while they were on holiday. If that's true, you know, there's something going on with that family. That much is for sure. So yeah, it's just very strange. Very strange. The other theory, I guess, that the show alludes to, which is how the show ends, which I know a lot of people don't like the ending, is, you know, that the house is essentially haunted, or like a paranormal entity that has its own kind of draw, you know? And that's kind of shown at the end, where pretty much everyone that was involved in that house is surrounding the house and staring at the house in some way, shape or form, i.e. they have all become watchers. Like, is it the house itself that turns you and creates obsession and turns everyone that has ever, you know, kind of made a deep contact with the house into watchers themselves, you know? Or is that just for entertainment purposes and they kind of fumbled it at the end because a lot of people hate the ending? I didn't mind the ending. I thought the show as a whole was quite cool. You know, it had some very, very creepy elements, but I felt like every episode of the show kind of focused on a potential suspect, and what they did with those suspects is made them as if you go, oh, well, it's them. It's definitely them. It's definitely them. And then the next episode, it's definitely them. And then the next episode, well, it's definitely them. And so it never actually gives you a straight answer, which, of course, it's an unsolved crime. I think a lot of people wanted, you know, resolution, but you can't get that with unsolved crime. You just can't, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's very interesting. I'm just going to quickly Google John Graff and see if he was a real person. Was John Graff from the Watcher a real person? John Graff was the serial killer neighbor that the family at the center of the Watcher were living in close proximity to as he murdered his loved ones. Yes. Created by American Horror Story mastermind Ryan Murphy, the Watcher delves into the couple's lives. Yep. Was he a real person, though? Oh my god, these pop-ups, bro. The Watcher itself is based on a true story of Derek and Maria Broaders, who are represented by Dean and Nora Brannock, played by Bobby Cannavale and Naomi Watts. The main plot is based on when they were stalked in 757 Boulevard, which was written about in the New York Magazine article in 2019. This wasn't the only true element of the Netflix... Yeah, okay, get to it, please. Well, oh my God. While John Graff doesn't exist... Oh, wait. He is based on a very real serial killer who isn't connected to the couple. The Watcher's John Graff is inspired by the 1970s murderer, John List, who killed his entire family. He previously worked as a lab technician in World War II before marrying widower Helen Morris Taylor. They had 3 children, Patricia, John, and Frederick, and moved to Jersey City with his mum in 1965. List and the family moved into a Victorian mansion called Breeze Knoll in Westfield. Okay, so it was in Westfield, and just a few years later, Helen became an alcoholic, and List had serious financial difficulties. In November 1971, List shot his mum and wife dead at the home before killing children Patricia, 16, Frederick, 13, and returned home from school. He then went to 15-year-old John's football game and drove him back to their house afterwards. There was evidence that John tried to defend himself, but List shot his son several times, killing him almost instantly. He went on to place his mum's body in her attic apartment and the rest of the body's corpses in the ballroom. List wrote a letter to his pastor explaining he killed his loved ones to save their souls from the world's evil. Similarly to the Watcher, List cut out all of the pictures in the family photo album so he would be more difficult to identify, and then cleaned the house from top to bottom. He also told the children's schools and Helen's work that they would be away for several weeks visiting his sick mother-in-law. It was only when a neighbour contacted the police concerned the lights were always on in the house a month later that the bodies were discovered. Helen's mum was expected to be the 6th victim, but she survived after postponing her trip because she was ill. Oh, okay, the mother's mum, right. List was able to get away with his crimes for almost 18 years, having changed his identity, moved to Denver, and remarried. It was only when the case was brought up again on America's Most Wanted in 1989 that a neighbour informed the police of the similarities. He continued to insist he was a man called Bob Clark for several months before admitting who he really was. In April 1990, List was sentenced to 5 consecutive terms for life imprisonment, 1 for each first-degree murder conviction. He initially argued he wasn't in a fit mental state as he was suffering from PTSD brought on by his experiences in the military. In 2002, List accepted culpability, stating in a TV interview, "I knew it was wrong. As I was doing it, I knew it was wrong." He died 6 years later of pneumonia. That's annoying. That's annoying because when I finished the show, me and my cousin talked about it, and we were both like, it's John Graff. The fucker wasn't even related to the story. That's so disappointing. Why would you do that? Like, if you're going to add a fucking random serial killer from the 70s, then just give it a good ending. Like, you clearly don't give a shit about the truth, so just give it a good ending. What? Well, what do you think about that, guys? What do you think about the fact that John Graff wasn't even, he was a serial killer in Westfield, but he wasn't in that house. He never owned that house. So he was obviously never in the fucking tunnels. That's really annoying. He died 6 years later, so he died in 2008. He was dead before they even moved in, so he couldn't have been under the fucking tunnels. Well, what do we think? Let me know your theories down below. I'd love to know. I'll do a follow-up video reading out your theories, so let me know down below, please, please, please. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, if you enjoy my content, like, share, and subscribe. You can become a patron as well. Yeah, there's lots of cool links down below, affiliate links for things as well. Wow, that's annoying. Has that annoyed you? Let me know down below. Thank you so much, though. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you very soon. Sweet one. Geese.